Like, I know that there is a kid out there who stayed up all night long for the game to come out and then didn't go to school the next day because he was so into playing it. And that even far exceeds my experiences when I was younger. And to think that I could make something that could have an impact on this kid even creatively, into thinking, hey, I know 2 guys made this. Like, maybe I can make something too.
It's been 10 years since one of the most influential indie platformers landed on the Xbox Live Arcade store. It was during a time that we were more likely to see an idea graduate from the Newgrounds front page and end up on the 360 Marketplace or WiiWare. And I gotta take a moment to ask, how cool was that? I remember playing Alien Hominid in my browser for the first time way back when, before seeing its full and upgraded retail release in a Blockbuster. Ask your parents what that is. There was already a bit of a foothold on the indie scene with zany hand-drawn games because of entries like Castle Crashers and Braid 2 years ago. They became the colorful underdogs of the industry, and after watching Indie Game the movie, how could you not love and root for these guys? Just like Macmillan said, it kind of bridged the gap between unachievable AAA industry titles and the daydreaming of a person avidly playing video games. It made a lot of people consider being a more active participant in the field. The line was blurred. And I understand that Flash largely achieved the same thing some years ago, but with more and more of these guys breaking into the official digital stores, it was much easier to see where the rubber hit the road. Super Meat Boy was a critical and commercial success, selling over 22,000 digital copies very shortly after release, and on top of making a cameo in pretty much every other indie game ever, it'd even go on to inspire its own subgenre of super hard indie platformers. I understand that Team Meat didn't invent the super hard indie platformer, but they definitely popularized it. In subsequent years, we'd see other games that mirrored it with things like Phoenix Furia and Dust Force. Dust Force is severely underrated, and while Phoenix Furia is far from perfect, I'll at least give it credit due to the fact that you can unlock literal cookie recipes. Speaking of far from perfect, around a month after its release on Xbox Live Arcade, we'd get a Steam release of Super Meat Boy that would eventually come with a feature that many wanted in the original release, but was simply not possible before: the level editor. It was not nearly as intuitive and finely polished as something like Mario Maker, since it's pretty much a thinly veiled version of what the devs made to make 90% of the levels in the game. But if you dug your feet into the ground and watched all the video tutorials, you could make something indistinguishable from a developer-made Meat Boy level, which is more than you can say of Mario Maker in relation to its mainline games. The unfortunate thing is that clearing these levels doesn't leave a badge of completion on the map. I understand that might sound petty, but ultimately it made me not as enthused about the mode since nothing was tracking my progress. The best of these levels would even make their way back to a world unlocked from the start on the original 360 release through a section known as the Interwebs, where the most popular user-made content, as well as levels made by Team Meat themselves, would be playable for console players. Your progress on these were saved. In fact, 20 of these levels launched with the game. This was updated infrequently, but when it was, you can bet I'd get excited to dive back in. In Team Meat's own words, it was a way to keep the book open so that more content can steadily drip in. In a time where games weren't updated with new content nearly as much as they are today, I have to say, I appreciated that. Before and after the release of the game, Team Meat was constantly getting pestered about a PlayStation 3 release. Unfortunately, their hands were tied due to an exclusivity deal they'd signed with Nintendo and Microsoft. It's hard to blame them for doing this, especially since Sony seemed highly disinterested in anything they pitched, but the others were smart enough to know that Meat Boy Flash was a good enough proof of concept and that the platformer had potential. This culminated in Team Meat getting pestered with tweets and emails from PlayStation fans well into and even before release. Understandably, they felt left out and wanted in on the game.
Is that if we don't have any ideas, and we've always been honest about this, if we don't have any ideas on how to innovate what we've already done, there's no way in hell we're going to work on a sequel.
Okay. Through their blog and interviews, Team Meat would consistently shut down any and all requests for a sequel, citing that they tend to distract and diminish the quality of the previous game with each subsequent entry. Yet despite this, as the years went on, they'd eventually soften up to the prospect of it, and while it wasn't considered the full-on sequel at the time, We saw the first glimpse in 2014 of what would eventually become the Super Meat Boy Forever people are anticipating today. It was originally planned as a mobile auto runner, but has since gotten a graphical and all-around update to make it a full-fledged sequel. Yes, the website refers to it as the official sequel, and I get the disappointment with it being an auto runner 100%, but personally, for me, it's all about how the rest of the game is centered around the moveset you're given, so if you're constantly running, obviously the levels have to accommodate that. To me, it looks like a good time, and I can't wait to play it. In June 2015, the PlayStation 4 and Vita versions of Super Meat Boy were announced and surprised everybody. Tommy explained his displeasure with having alienated a section of his fan base with the Microsoft deal, and he said that he was very happy that he was able to do this now. This was very much the Super Meat Boy people praised and loved, but something was different: the soundtrack. Turns out audio composer Danny B had chosen not to renew the licensing for future console ports. The exact reason for this is unknown, but he at the very least threw Team Meat under the bus a little bit by confirming on his blog that creative differences were not the reason he was refusing to work with them again. This was not received well. Danny's soundtrack was an integral part of Super Meat Boy's DNA. Removing it is not something you just do. The new soundtrack was composed by, apologies if I mispronounce this, Matthias Bossi and John Evans. And it was not bad. Upon firing the game up, you'll immediately notice the new country twangs of World 1 soundtrack, as opposed to the heavier metal atmosphere that Danny was going for. It definitely takes some getting used to. It's big, big shoes to fill. Imagine firing up World 1-1 from Super Mario Bros. And hearing a different jingle. It's not going to be a seamless transition. It's going to take a little bit to get used to it. All of that being said, I cannot overstate enough how much I think the original soundtrack and Super Meat Boy cannot be separated. The broody melancholy of the Salt Factory and the electric trip of Super Meat World's selection screen just entranced me every single time I turned it on. In 2017, we'd get some tweets that confirmed that Edmund McMillan had left Team Meat, deciding to focus on Isaac and other life stuff at the time. Details on this are sparse, but it's safe to say that it's not the best of terms, I suppose, since they unfollowed each other and are very vague on the subject, but honestly, it's not much of our business anyway, and I think as fans, the most we should say is just, I hope that whatever it wasn't too bad, and that they can be on something resembling decent terms going forward.
We did it! Yeah, we did it! Oh, right! Yeah!
In January of 2018, SMB released on the Nintendo Switch, becoming portable for the first time. After all these years, I figured it was time to hop back in and give the game a go. I was surprised by two things. For one, the tiny levels and snappy menus fit the Switch really well. While I was out and about, I was able to make it through the entirety of Chapter 1's Light World before my food was ready at a restaurant. The second thing I was surprised by was an entirely new race mode that allowed you and a friend to speed through an assortment of levels chosen or random to see who got the best times. This was kind of neat. You could see the other player's ghost on your side of the screen, and getting 2 bandages allowed you to skip levels, which added a level of strategy. This would eventually make its way to the Steam version of the game, but judging by the reviews, save data getting lost was a common problem even well after launch.
No start button. And I was trying to do something right off the bat to let people know that they weren't playing a regular video game.
So, what's the future for Meat Boy? Well, as mentioned before, Super Meat Boy Forever is on the horizon. The 10th anniversary stream just happened, and I did a video covering some of the stuff that was revealed. Tommy has even discussed a possible Super Meat Boy 3. What that could be is unknown, but he has said that it would be very different from the 2 that we have. If that's not enough to sate your appetite, I highly recommend Dust Force, and The End Is Nigh if you need more brutal platforming in your life. Whatever drama might have happened between the original 2 members of Team Meat, I hope that everyone is able to prosper relatively unharmed, and that we can enjoy many more great games from these 2 developers, even if they aren't as involved with each other as we would like. Thanks for watching this retrospective. If you like Super Meat Boy, you can go ahead and sub to the channel. I'm going to have a review of Super Meat Boy Forever when that comes out. Really looking forward to it. Hope people have eased up to the auto-running thing on it a little bit. I also might do a video on Kingsway, that weird Adult Swim game that came out a while ago. For some reason, I've just been thinking about it. No idea why. Either way, yeah, feel free to like or whatever you feel is appropriate for how much you enjoyed the video. Have a nice night, and thank you for watching.